All right, here we go, man. Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, good friend, longtime colleague, and writer extraordinaire, Rob Morse. He has got the Slowfax blog, and you ought to be listening to his self-defense gun stories. Every week, he does 3 to 4 DGUs, digs deep into them, and kind of goes into what was good here, what was not so good here, what could have been done better.
Thank you, Paul.
Let's see here. I got to get, as we get started here, I need to remind everybody, if you're watching us on Facebook on the Polite Society podcast page, or if you're watching us on the Facebook, the YouTube page for Polite Society podcast, you can comment on those videos if you're catching us anywhere else. Rumble, Getter, OpsLens, anywhere else. Go to Twitter, tweet with the hashtag #TheBullet. We'll get those comments in, we'll get them on the air, and we'll discuss them live.
Paul, can you flip me?
Yes, I can, if you can give me just 1 second here. I need to bring you up here, click that button, and then click that button, and all of a sudden, Rob's looking the other way.
Thank you, sir.
You betcha. I've learned over time, if I want to point at Rob, I got to point that way. So, anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Rob, let's talk first. New Jersey, man. New Jersey's not having a good week in the courts.
No, which New Jersey having a bad week in court is good news for most gun owners.
Yes.
Now, what's interesting, a Biden-appointed judge, I'll repeat that, a federal judge appointed by President Joe Biden, said New Jersey can't hold firearms manufacturers liable for their advertising and marketing campaigns. New Jersey legislators had said that gun manufacturers created mass murderers because of the way they advertised their guns. Now, this was true even if the murderers didn't buy their guns but stole them from lawful gun owners who actually went to stores and bought them. So a few days ago, New Jersey was told that their gun control laws couldn't criminalize ordinary people like us, law-abiding citizens, from carrying a concealed firearm in our own cars when we drove on public roads. That same law also created too many prohibited places, like every business and churches.
Your own car.
Now a third, say again?
One of the prohibited places was your own car.
Right, yes indeed. Now a third case has gone against both the New Jersey Attorney General and the New Jersey law that said firearms manufacturers are responsible for the way criminals use guns because of the way the firearms companies had conducted their marketing and advertising practices. Let me give you the quotes. The New Jersey statute runs afoul of the goals of the Federal Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act and would in fact gut the PLCAA. The New Jersey law is in direct conflict with the PLCAA's purpose, close quote. The judge then goes on to say it's likely to be preempted by the federal statute, and there are, again I'm going to quote because I'm not a judge, I don't talk this way, quote, concerns as to whether the New Jersey law can survive on constitutional grounds as well, close quote. The judge said he didn't have to look at the constitutionality because of the issue of preemption already made this state law improper, unconstitutional. I'm not sure what it becomes then.
Yeah, it's
He used the word preempted.
Yeah, he did, and me. I screwed up and turned off social media connections, so
oh, Paul,
I need to because we are getting comments on this already. And for those of you on social media, no, that is not Craig DeLuz with me. The guy looks a little bit different than Craig does, but they're both smart guys. So
Craig is much better looking, let's be honest.
All right, and click there we go. Okay. Let me get this one up. Michael, and this is a little bit different than what we're talking about now, but in the wake of Supreme Court Second Amendment decision, uncertainty plagues new gun laws. That's a CBS News article. Not exactly what you would consider CBS News a pro-freedom news outlet.
Exactly. No. I don't think it makes them uncertain at all, Michael. Whether a particular law will end up being challenged is always uncertain because there are so many, and the courts can only look at some of them. I thought the Bruen decision was pretty clear. The court said, yeah, we meant it. Actually, the court claimed nothing changed since Heller and McDonald. Here, we told you what to do. You didn't do it. Once more time for those of you at the back of the class who are not getting it.
Well, and New Jersey isn't the only one that's getting slapped around in federal court.
Right. Right.
Illinois is getting its share of slapdowns as well. And I expect that to continue. We've got, and honestly, I expect it to continue not just for New Jersey and Illinois. I expect in the fairly near future, we're going to be getting a slapdown against the Department of Justice and a pistol brace rule.
You mean ATF?
Yeah.
Okay. ATF. California was scolded by Judge Benitez, and then Gavin Newsom calls him out and uses politically pejorative language to call him, a gun nut judge, an extremist. And I'm going, you just did that to a federal judge? Are you? Wow. I wonder how the other judges on the court view a politician's characterization of one of their colleagues in such terms. That's not technically news of the day, but it did come up yesterday.
You did. And not focusing on politics and national politics for a few moments. Biden has not announced his re-election campaign yet, and that is actually really late. Usually the president, before 2 years is up, before his first 2 years in office are up, right around the time the elections wrap up for midterms, the president will announce that they're going to run for re-election. That happened with Trump. Trump actually declared before the midterms in his 4 years. But that happened with Obama both times. It happened with almost every president in recent memory. And so I'm wondering if Biden's going to run. And one of the large names on the Democratic side that is up if Biden does not run is Newsom. And
right.
They're very thin ice for a Democratic possible presidential nominee to be walking on.
Well, he's part of the Pelosi clan, Gavin Newsom is, and Pelosi just got spanked. She lost control of the House.
Yeah.
So that may be putting Gavin on thin ice. Maybe he thinks he needs to attract a Bloomberg bucks. And in fact, if Bloomberg is sitting there and playing kingmaker and choosing between Biden and Newsom, maybe that's why that's kept Joe from declaring.
Yeah, it could be. Want to get a comment in from Jack on the Facebook side here. He says, it's been fun watching all these leftists come unhinged. And we've got some more unhingement to come. But let's get to the Chicago story, man. You want to talk about Chicago, Rob?
Sure. It's almost not news, except it is. There was another violent weekend in Chicago. 17 people were shot, and an additional 3 were shot and killed by the drug gangs that control Chicago's streets. There were over 3,000 victims last year, and an additional 240 people shot so far this year. That leaves Chicago politicians desperate to find an excuse for their failed political decisions. Illinois Democrats passed more gun control laws, they issued more press releases, and said none of this violence was their fault.
Well, they've done their absolute best, their absolute level best to make sure that nobody can respond if they're violently attacked. So
they're trying, and thank goodness, and I mean that in all sincerity, you and I read about self-defense in Chicago every day.
Yep.
That doesn't mean it's particularly well defended, just that it's horribly violent.
It absolutely is. And we had actually a discussion last night about a Chicago homeowner on Polite Society, an 80-year-old man
Right.
who had 2 people break into his house. He was fortunately he was able to, by doing what Rob and I call pogo, pants on, gun on, he was able to shoot one of them and survive the violent attack he was going through. They, of course, retreated when one of them was injured. And everything turned out good, but the guy had his gun on him inside his house, which
Right.
I wish more people would do. So,
Yeah. Amen.
but I want to take off to the next one here. And oh, by the way, before I do, we talked a little bit off air. Everybody goes nuts when there's a mass shooting. There's the equivalent of a mass shooting in Chicago every week. We were just over every weekend because there were 17 shot, 3 killed. So a total of 20, 17 shot, 3 shot and killed in Chicago. And drug gangs did it, and crickets.
Crickets, right. Yeah, Chicago, the drug gangs in Chicago are paying politicians. You expect them to change anything?
Yeah.
It'll change when the votes change. The citizens absolutely control that.
Well, I've gotten a YouTube strike already about talking about elections, so we'll discuss that maybe a little bit off the air.
Let's go to California, shall we?
Yeah, let's do that. I'll take this one. Of course, California blames those who have done nothing wrong. In response to recent mass shootings, Santa Clara County announced a major expansion of a gun violence restraining order program, more than quadrupling the staff from 5 to 23 people. Quote, California has some of the most robust and extensive gun laws in the country, but they need to be meaningful. They need to be effective, said prosecutor James Gibbons Shapiro with the district attorney's office. Gibbons Shapiro says in order for these laws to be effective, they have to be enforced. He says he's encouraged by the commitment to add more prosecutors and law enforcement to the gun violence strike team. Quote, we need to up our capacity so that every time someone makes a threat, that we have the resources to get that court order and remove guns from that person, he said. Under the current staffing, the county has 5 prosecutors and law enforcement officers to file for restraining orders and then physically seize the guns. In 2021, the county removed guns from 145 people using so-called red flag gun laws. Quote, the more firearms we remove from people who shouldn't have them or aren't properly taking care of them, the more lives we are going to save, said Supervisor Cindy Chavez. Well, I'll agree with, I believe it or not, I'm going to agree with her on one point. You need to clean your guns. You need to make sure they're in proper working order. So when you're attacked, you're absolutely assured when you pull that trigger, it goes bang properly.
Yes, sir.
You need to take care of your guns.
We not covered in today's news. It's old news. We had a Fifth Circuit court say you can take firearms away from someone who is an addict, from someone who's crazy, but you can't take firearms away from someone because they used marijuana. They need to be intoxicated. Just like if if you're the town drunk, I'm sorry, we're going to take away your firearms. If you ever drank alcohol, that's not sufficient. There needs to be due process. Well, that's true in the Fifth. That's not true in the Ninth Circuit, where red flag laws are getting the nod. Red flag laws are going to be next because you're not even present when you're flagged and your firearms are, when a court proceeding happens that says you will be disarmed at gunpoint.
Got a lot of comments that have come in. I want to get to a few of them here. Facebook user watching probably in the Facebook, in the Polite Society Podcast Facebook group, but I don't get names when you comment in the group. In other words, make sure your guns are well regulated. If you go if you go back to the original meaning of the Second Amendment, yes, absolutely. Another person says, Paul, if a private school in Chicago is attacked and 21 white children are slaughtered, it'll get attention. Chicago is racist. No news on the black lives killed weekly, and they matter.
Yes, sir.
Well, Rob and I talk about it, but yeah, you're not going to hear about it on CBS, NBC, CNN.
Truth.
All right, so yeah, it's unfortunate, and I did see a story where they're looking to continue to blame the shootings, not on gangs, but on guns coming into the Chicago area being transported in, and they're also trying to do that in California. Well, I never made it to the news, and I've not even talked to Rob about it yet. I did find through Twitter about a week and a half ago a bit of research that if you live in Arizona, the number one exporter of crime guns is California. If you live in Oregon, the number two exporter of crime guns is California. Nevada, your number one export of crime guns, California. So they've got really, really ugly laws in California, but they're still exporting crime guns.
Their border is wide open. They're a conduit for narcotics, illegal immigrants, and human trafficking. If you're going to move $1 billion worth of drugs and millions of individuals, you can move a few ounces of plastic and steel.
Yeah. Now, well, and a few pounds. And let's face it, a few pounds really is all the drug gangs need. They just need to use it once. They don't need to practice with it. They don't need to make sure that when they use their gun that they hit what they're aiming at. They're criminals. So a few pounds of ammunition,
right?
A few ounces of guns, yeah, they're covered.
China?
Wait just a second here. This is great.
We got a good one, huh?
Yeah, gun websites. Pete says, I've always been concerned about how much California looks like a 30-round magazine. It makes us in Arizona uncomfortable.
Cute.
Yes, absolutely. This next one, this is off. And Rob, I don't know if you've noticed this. China is pushing for disarmament, and specifically disarmament. They're pushing hard in California, Oregon, and Washington. Their media is exploiting everything they can about bad things that are happening in these states. This is off China Daily. The recent mass shootings in Monterey Park and Half Moon Bay, California, showed that state gun laws alone cannot stop mass shootings without coordinated U.S. federal response. California gun laws include bans on military assault weapons and large-capacity magazines that have been used in many mass shootings, the British paper said last week, adding that California is just one of two states, along with New Jersey, to receive an A rating for the gun safety group Giffords, based on the strength of its firearms regulations. While gun rights proponents have cited two shootings as evidence of the ineffectiveness of California's laws, groups like Giffords fiercely reject those arguments, gun safety groups have noticed dramatic decline in firearm mortality rate in California in years since tougher regulations were enacted, it said. Maybe if you exclude gang activity.
There's a 2-decade trend showed a decline in violent crime.
Yeah.
It peaked in the 1970s with the crack epidemic in minority communities. So, of course, as gun laws were proposed, the entire society rode that trend toward more and more peaceful civility. That disappeared 2 years ago with COVID restrictions. It threw tens of millions of us out of jobs. It destroyed millions of businesses, crushed families. Addiction soared, violence soared. So details matter here. Yes, Paul, I have a theory on this. There are lots of Chinese immigrants on the West Coast. I've worked with many of them.
Some of them brilliant people that work in tech industry.
Some of them. I suspect China is worried about the contagion that these people would see guns, become armed, and then tell their relatives back home what it's like to be a free people rather than a subject of the state.
You know, I'd never really thought of it that way. That
must be why you keep me around.
Got another person in a Facebook group that says, China friends love my gun safe pictures.
Let's see. I bet. A friend of mine from Russia would ask me to video him when we would go to the range, and basically had the same comment. Hi, as a Russian immigrant, now an American citizen living here, this is what we do with an AK. I wonder if, I suspect that there might have been similar videos sent back home, unless they were suppressed by the Chinese media.
I'm not entirely certain, but where I'm worried about is China. I'm worried more directly. I mean, I think you're worried about Chinese people on the mainland finding out what freedom's like and pushing for freedom in China. Right. I'm worried about a military that's 3 times the size of the United States military and eyeing maybe something happening on the West Coast.
Okay.
That's my fear. If we haven't been invaded by a foreign country since, I want to say it was 1859 was last time, and that was Mexicans that came across, the Mexican military came across. That was the last time a foreign country invaded U.S. soil. I don't see them making it to Louisiana. I don't see them making it to South Dakota. I don't even see them making it to Idaho. However, if they can soften the target enough, I believe the West Coast could be vulnerable. Seriously, the Second Amendment, it's about protection of ourselves. It's also about protection of our country.
I can imagine China simply assuming all the California government debt, and they say, okay, we own you guys. Pay up. We'll call the shots now.
Yeah, and I often sound like a cheerleader for my governor here, Kristi Noem. There is legislation she helped to write that is in the South Dakota legislature right now that bans foreign, specifically Chinese investment in South Dakota farmland.
Right.
That is a trend that she absolutely wants to stop, and I'm behind that 100%.
Well, Paul, really, I understand Governor Noem's point. I agree with it. The larger issue is a balance of trade. If we run a trade deficit, we're giving them our dollars. We won't sell them oil. Joe Biden said stop drilling. They want to buy land instead. We're stupid. Oh, by the way, this is the paper I grew up with, the Marin Independent Journal.
You want to take it?
Sure. The general public, particularly in California, they're smarter than their politicians give them credit for. They're not buying unilateral armament, despite the outrage over a cycle of deadly mass shootings in California and a few in other states. A new poll out on Monday found plummeting support for a national assault weapons ban. That reflects what even backers of the ban say may be growing pessimism over whether such a law would actually reduce violence. President Joe Biden and California Governor Gavin Newsom have both called for a ban, and California Senator Dianne Feinstein introduced a new ban bill last month. That bill is similar to the one Congress allowed to expire after about 10 years in 2004. California has banned the sale of, quote, assault weapons since 1989, but that ban is under a legal challenge. Quote, while Biden has undertaken a new push to ban assault weapons, public views on the issue are now closely divided. 51% of respondents say they were opposed, and less than a majority, 47%, were in support of a gun ban. The research asked about an assault weapons ban 22 times over 13 years starting in 1995 and noted that most other polls, majorities have supported such a measure, peaking at 79% in mid-1999. Report fell to 56% with 41% opposed in September of 2019, the last time this firm conducted a nationwide poll.
And I would say it's going to continue going down. Look, the CNN, the legacy media is absolutely in the pocket of the Democrats and their goal of disarmament. I honestly think there are a lot of people that are listening to Rob Morris's self-defense gun stories, that are watching The Bullet, tuning into Polite Society podcast, tuning into Cam and Company over on Bearing Arms. The Second Amendment media, the people are going around the mainstream media, going to us and finding out what's really going on. And I think that's happening a lot more than we're even taking credit for ourselves.
Well, we had 5 million new gun owners. I bet they saw the news, felt insecure, thought a firearm would help. Now, what do I do with it? I need training. Where do I go to train? How do I handle it? What do I tell my children? How do I teach my children to behave around guns in my home, and if they see guns in other homes? Welcome to the gun culture. And then when someone says, we'd be safer if there were no guns, they're looking around going, my guns aren't the problem. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and I suck at swordplay, so, you know.
Family show. Good point.
Yeah, we are down at the bottom of the hour, man. If you would, on our way out, tell us about self-defense gun stories and anything else you want to plug, bud.
I put out a short podcast, 20 minutes, once a week, self-defense gun stories. We find out if our neighbor next door actually was following best practice. I'm a co-host with Paul on the Polite Society podcast once a week, 90 minutes. We try and dig deep, find the news behind the news. I also write at slowfacts.wordpress.com. From there, my writing is picked up at AmmoLand, where I write the Armed Citizens column.
And I want to throw a little bit of a shameless plug in here. Last night, Rob Morris and I, along with Carrie Ann Auclair, completed episode number 650 of the Polite Society podcast, and it happened to fall on the week of the anniversary of me being in broadcasting 11 years. It has been an extremely wild ride. Things just continue getting better and better and better and better. I'd be lying if I said I was enthused the whole time I was going through it, but I just never quit. I never threw in the towel, and that's kind of how I got
Paul, after 11 years, you're almost an overnight sensation.
Pretty close. So I want to thank everybody that has been a part of me getting through 11 years and 650 episodes of the Polite Society podcast, and now we're over 100 episodes into the Bullet. It's just it's fantastic, and I'm the future's looking bright. Let's put it that way. We do have one more story we didn't have time to get with. That will probably make it to the weekend Bullet. Just real quickly, there's a story out of Wyoming where they're talking about expanding gun rights onto college campuses, and the newspaper in Wyoming couldn't find anybody in state to complain about it. So they had to go to a student group in New York to get quotes on why this shouldn't happen. And I was going to give them a hard time, but we're flat out of time here. Please do come join me on the rest of the week, the daily bullets, tomorrow through Friday, and on Saturday we've got a weekly bullet. It's a 1-hour show. We can expand more on the individual stories. Come join us for that. Until then, everybody, thanks for watching. We'll see you